Oh, hey, look, someone's here. Oh, I guess I can unmute people. So you don't have to be unmuted if you don't want to be, but we'll go through it. Let me get my screen going. It looks like recording has started. Go ahead and share my screen. And I want to do that. Technical difficulties. I want to share my screen, but not share my notes. Let's see if we can do this. Perfect. This will work. Okay. So hi, my name is Guy Parisi. This Zoom here is about going over an RV park that was kind of posted on the Facebook group. It's an interesting case study because I think it has good positives and it has some pretty glaring negatives. And so I wanted to kind of show how kind of I do the um, analysis of this so that people can kind of see exactly like what I went through when I looked at it. So for me, I currently own a lot of single family rentals. I own an Airbnb, but I also own a mobile home park that has RV rental spots. Eventually, I'm going to be doing a video that talks about how to evaluate mobile home parks for purchasing, which will include like RV parks. But this isn't that video. So I'm not going to go through all of the details about like exactly how you do it kind of step by step. But I figure this is, a good place to get started for this particular deal so you can kind of see the highs and the lows. Um, so why shouldn't you be listening to me? Because I'm kind of anti RV park, to be quite frank. So I really like mobile home parks. I think the mobile home parks are a really excellent asset class, and I'm very skeptical of RV parks. That's not to say RV parks are bad. I don't think they are, but I would rather own a mobile home park than an RV park, and we'll kind of get into a little bit more of that as we go on. So what you're seeing on the screen is someone posted, this is just a screenshot of what they posted, but this is what they posted in, in the, on the free creative group here. And so this is just a snippet. It doesn't include all the details, but this was what was posted. And so it caught my eye. Oops, it caught my eye. And so I thought always worth kind of looking through that stuff and seeing how it goes. So just to clear the air here, there's no judgment on the person who brought this deal, right? So wholesalers do an amazing job. They have a very difficult time, in bringing things to market. So I always appreciate any wholesaler who brings a deal to market, even if the deal isn't for me. So this isn't a judgment on the wholesaler at all. So the first thing that's important about either buying a mobile home park or buying an RV park in this particular case is that you're buying a business. And that's different than traditional real estate. Like when you buy a single family house, or even a duplex, we'll say anywhere from 1 to 4 units, right? We'll call that single family. So anywhere from 1 to 4. So when you're buying that, you're buying real estate. And you have a lot of different strategies in terms of how that can be deployed, which gives you different options. Like, for example, you can rent it out. So you can evaluate it based on rental criteria. You can sell it to a homestead buyer. So you can evaluate it based on homestead criteria. There's a lot of different strategies. But when it comes to mobile home parks and RV parks, effectively, it's going to live and die by its cash flow. And so that's going to be how much cash flow it currently generates versus how much cash flow it can potentially generate. And ideally, you're going to want to try to buy, based on a number that's somewhere in between those two figures there. All right, so there's going to be good, there's going to be bad. Let's go ahead and start kind of going through those things. So the first big thing that stood out to me is this particular park has a very low entry fee. You can see down here at the bottom, the terms are $60,000 paid at closing, which includes their assignment. That's really inexpensive. What I've seen most commonly when buying mobile home parks and RV parks is that most people are going to want 25% down. Even seller financing usually, I mean, seller financing can range for as I've seen as low as 5% down, but that's particularly rare. All the way up to 50% down in some deals. But I would say the average is probably 25% down. So this is about 16%. So this is actually like a really good entry fee for this particular asset, which is, that's pretty good. We can see that the interest rate is a 3% interest rate. That's fantastic. The only way you can get 3% is seller financing, is the only way. And that's just because you're going to be dealing with commercial loans on these particular types of properties. And so they're probably never going to be this low again. And I would hazard to guess that the current owner of this particular RV park probably has it for seller financing as well, and the sub 2 deal is to take over their seller financing, because I don't even know if commercial rates ever went that low for this particular asset type. One of the things, we do see it here. Okay, so another big thing is that this is all on city utilities. That's another excellent thing to have. So city water, city sewer, city electric. City utilities are great. They're a little bit more expensive in terms of how much they cost on a usage basis, right? So for example, with city utilities, you're going to pay for water and they're going to charge you based on how many gallons you use. And then sewer is going to be some factor based on how many gallons of water you used. So, when you have city utilities, you're going to pay the usage cost. So that's always going to be more expensive than private utilities, because private utilities, which would be like a well and a septic tank or something similar, obviously it doesn't cost you anything to flush anything down a septic tank. And if you have well water, it doesn't cost you anything to pull the water from the earth, except for the ongoing maintenance of the well. However, the ongoing maintenance of both a septic and a well system, so private utilities in this particular case, can get very expensive. I've definitely heard of mobile home parks who've had contaminated wells. And once you have a contaminated well, then you have a really big problem, because you actually can't actually let anyone drink the water. So you have to like bring in bottled water, or the kind of the glacier stuff for everyone. And so that's a big a big difference in private versus public. So I actually really, really like public utilities. And again, the city is responsible for those utilities up until it gets to your land, right? Once it's on your land, then you have the infrastructure that you have to maintain on your land. But all the way to your land, totally fine. Versus if everything's yours, then it's all up to you to have to do that. So another big thing, and this is particular for RV parks in this case, is that right now we are seeing an extremely high nomadic worker demand for RV parks. COVID kind of opened the floodgates a little bit for people to travel and do more of that, and so people kind of stopped living in cities as much, and they started dispersing. So with that, we're seeing a real big boom in the RV park industry right now, as people kind of decide, you know what? I'm done with renting. I'm done with home ownership, whatever it happens to be. I'm going to buy a fifth wheel and I'm going to tour the country, and work remotely. So we're seeing a huge amount of that. Also, in this particular case, you can see that what the seller has notated here is there's a large pipeline project that's been approved. And so they're saying 500 plus workers are going to need housing. So the mobile home park I own is in Iowa, and the vast majority of my RV spots are taken up by nomadic workers. So these are people who work in the trades, and so they travel around from state to state looking for jobs. So they get a contract job to do something like a pipeline project or a power grid issue or something like that. And so they get in their RV and they travel from state to state to do that. Their company generally pays for the RV spots. So that's by and far the most I get in my particular area. But we're starting to see also, again, more of the people who are just kind of doing the digital nomad thing and just getting in RVs and moving around. So those are definitely there. And so RV sites are getting a lot more popular. The other big one here is that at full occupancy, right? So we're just going to use kind of their numbers here. And I'm going to use their low number. So let's say the market rent is in fact $325. Again, if you're buying this, you definitely need to vet every single thing that comes through here. But the market rent is listed at $325. So if we do the $325 times the 38 sites that are there, times 12, we get a number. I'm applying a 50% expense ratio to this. And that's to cover things like utilities. I find that's probably typically what I would estimate for RV sites is about 50% expense ratio, because you generally for RVs are not charging them specifically for the utilities they use. Usually whatever you're charging includes all utility hookup. It's very hard to build that back, right? So like I just don't. I say it's all inclusive of utilities and you kind of go from there. So if we look at that, so if we do that math and we take the 50% expense ratio, that means this park is going to be generating on the low end of $74,100 per year, right? I don't want to get into the huge cap rate calculation, but effectively you start looking at the purchase price or what's left on the mortgage divided by that stuff. You're almost at 20 cap. 20 cap is fantastic, especially when you have a 3% interest rate. You'll make money hand over fist if you can fill this thing up. So I've covered the good. So now let's cover some of the things that I considered red flags when I saw this particular park. The first one, and it is in the post here. It's further down. It kind of has some of these items, but I just chose like this upper snippet, thing. But you'll see it here. This was purchased in 2020, and it shut down due to COVID. They currently have 0 occupancy. Not a single one of these RV sites are occupied at the moment. So that means that it's going to cost you, the pity price at the very least, the $2,000 per month just to operate this thing. So that's something you're gonna have to, kind of have on mind. Just not just the 60,000 at closing. You're gonna have to pay those ongoing costs until you start to fill it back up again. The next thing that's going to be a big problem, since the park was closed, it also has no manager. You cannot run an RV park without having an on-site manager, or at least someone that's close by. They don't necessarily have to be on site, but if they don't live in the town, it's not worth doing. Managers are not overly expensive. This is not something that you necessarily pay them $40,000 a year just to manage the park. Often cases, you can get someone who just lives on site and you comp them their lot rent, so they just stay there rent free, and then they do the management of the park. So it's not a massive expense to get a manager, but you do have to get one. And then a big thing is once you get a manager, you have to manage that manager. And going back to kind of my earlier statement of why I prefer mobile home parks as opposed to RV parks, is RV parks have the absolute highest chance of theft, of manager theft, out of any of the kind of like of those two asset classes. And the reason why, especially if you're operating this, let's say this is in Kansas and you're operating this out of New York or Florida or something like that. So you have your fees online. Everyone can book online. They've actually got a great website. I already checked out their website, so you can do all the reservations there. That's fantastic. It's great. Where manager theft comes into play is when someone drives on site and they go meet up with a manager, and they're like, "Hey, we want to park our RV here for, a month. How much is it?" And the manager goes, "Oh, well, it's $325. You can book online or whatever. Or I have a cash offer. It's only $250 a month." They pay the manager in cash. They hook up to the utilities. Manager says, "Nope, no one came in," right? And now you're, now you're out. So that's something that you have to watch for. That's very, very difficult to do because again, your utilities are not generally submetered. Your electrical might be, but you may not get that until later to see all of a sudden that there was a spike in electrical usage. So that so it's hard to kind of track that stuff. So that's something to be very careful of. So there is no manager in place. You will have to hire one, and then you'll have to monitor kind of the manager in this particular situation. Okay, now let's talk about where it is. And this is something that I do immediately whenever I'm looking for a mobile home park or whatever. So this is listed as in Anthony, Kansas, and I know nothing about Kansas, right? So I don't know this from Adam. But one of the greatest sites when you're looking at either mobile home parks or RV parks is bestplaces.net. Right, and so let me pull that up. Let's see here. So it's 67003. So we go to bestplaces.net, right? And this is just a magical site. So 67003. And the number we're looking for is 100,000. What do I mean? We want there to be 100,000 people living in that particular area. Now, again, these numbers are more for mobile home parks, but I think they're going to work kind of with RV parks, but I'll get on that a little bit here in a second. So we can see we're looking at this. This is going to pull up a zip code. Zip code is too small, right? So that 100,000 number, that applies to what we call the metro area. In this particular case, we don't have a metro. So Best Places has this ability that we can kind of go up further. If there is no metro area listed, we use the county as their option. So let me click on county. So we're in Harper County, Kansas now, and again, 5,000 people live in Harper County. So what does this mean? This means no one lives there. Bottom line, no one's here. So you're really not going to have much in the way of local people that want to live in your mobile or in your RV park. Now that's typical, right? Again, that's not what they're advertising. They are advertising this specifically for migrant workers that are in the area. However, if that pipeline project gets delayed, or if it gets canceled, or once it gets completed, how are you going to keep this park full? So that is something that is, is very, very important. Another thing to note while we're looking at Best Places, this is another really handy thing, is it gives you a medium home price. Again, going back to that 100,000 number, we want to see 100,000 population. We also want to see the medium home price be over 100,000, right? We want homes to be expensive in these areas. Why do we want homes to be expensive? Because if people can't afford homes, they're going to look for alternate places. So they're going to either rent, or in this case, they'll get an RV, move into your RV spot for cheaper living, right? So those are some things that we want to that we can see there. So I think that it's going to be difficult to fill this park, and that's anyway. That's a big red flag for me, is how remote this particular thing is. Another thing that's important to keep in, kind of know about RV parks, is that RV parks are hard to fill and they're easy to vacate. One of the things that I've noticed is, again, I advertise for my RV spots in my mobile home park. I get a lot of people who call and ask for rates. I give them a rate. They say, that's great. I'll give you a call back in a week. And I never hear from them again. I think it's about 80% of people who are calling to ask, they're probably just kicking tires and rate checking. Fine, I don't care. But 80% of them don't book. What do I mean by easy to vacate? So when we're talking about like a mobile home park, it's very difficult to pick up and move a mobile home. It is extremely easy to move an RV. And the problem with that is that banks don't particularly love the fact that the income producing asset can just get up and move and go anywhere they want to. So what I've heard is that banks usually value RV spots at about 60%. You will definitely want to talk with someone who operates more RV spots and how they've gone through banking to see exactly what that number is. But my understanding is that banks definitely prefer a fixed asset there that cannot leave, like a mobile home, versus an RV, which can literally move in the middle of the night. The other big problems that I've seen in my particular park is that, rent's always due before the month. So I send the bill for that. Then on day 2, I'm like, hey, you haven't paid yet. What's going on? Problem with the money, it's blah, blah, blah. It'll definitely be there in a day or 2. Well, 2 days later, they're gone, right? They've made sure they filled up their RV. They got all the stuff. They charged all their batteries and they left. And I got nothing, right? So something to be aware of when you're dealing with RVs. Another thing that we can do is we can actually, let's see here, I'll take a look at Google Maps of the area. So this is, I do the valuation based on Best Places. One of the things that people like to do is they like to kind of take a look at Google Maps. We'll do a nearby search for where this is, right? So here we're in Anthony, and this is the mobile home park right here, or not the mobile home, the RV park. You can kind of look, right? So that's where it is right here. So if we do a nearby, one of the things that some people like to do is they like to do the Walmart test, right? And so that is, how far away is the nearest Walmart, from my spot? The theory behind this is that Walmart spends more money than most of us will ever even consider on where they need to build their stores. And so they are building their stores in areas that have population density. They know there's going to be growth and all that stuff. So when you look at buying assets like this, having it near a Walmart means that Walmart thought the area was good enough to place something. we can see from here, and I could probably do the driving distances to all of these different things, but at the end of the day, we can see that we're kind of in the middle, but we're not, like right here. I mean, we're seeing, look at all those Walmarts that are in this particular area. This is extreme density versus down here, we're seeing, I think there are some, down south here, a little north, but again, it's simply just not meeting the criteria for density. So that again is a major red flag. And then kind of the last thing that kind of struck me on this particular one was the fact that it was shut down due to COVID. Most of the RV site operators I've spoken with have found massive increases due to COVID. Right? So like COVID filled up their parks. So it's kind of strange that in this particular case, this one shut their park down. So that's definitely something that I would be very concerned about. How I would go about that is I would actually if we're looking in kind of like the whole Anthony, Kansas area, what we could do is we can do a nearby, and we could actually search for nearby RV park. And we can see that there's actually a couple, right, like directly in Anthony. And so you can see there's one here, and then there's Forest Oaks over here. I would probably call these guys up, and ask what their occupancy looks like. This RV park it has a mobile home right here. So this looks like it's a mobile home / RV park, but it's easy enough to call them up, figure out what their occupancy rates are, and that'll help determine whether or not you're getting that density there. So that goes through the list of the things that I saw as red flags for this particular park. So you've seen the good, you've seen the bad. There's one other one that I didn't see on here. I reached out and I asked about it, and I never got a response back. I don't see any language about a balloon on this particular deal. Again, we talked about it a little bit before. I'm pretty sure that the sub 2 deal is sub 2ing a seller finance deal, because that interest rate seems extremely low. Even for 2020, like I have a hard time believing that that's a commercial loan. If it is a commercial loan, almost guarantee it has a balloon. Most commercial loans I see, 5-year balloon. Maybe it's 7-year, but mostly it's a 5-year balloon. So if it's a 5-year balloon and they bought it in 2020, that means you got 2 years before you got to refinance out of this thing. So those are going to be really important. And again, we don't know. They could have a seller finance balloon on it too. So we have no idea where that is. So based on based on kind of what we've seen here, let's see. I think I did the numbers on it, and I think that if I assumed that you were like getting 2 or 3 people per month. I think if you could put 2 people in the park every month, you have to get it up to 13 occupants before you're even paying back the pity payment. And so it's like, okay, so if I'm getting 2 people a month, so that means 6 months I'm going to be waiting, and that's assuming that I'm having monthly rentals. Who knows if those people are only staying for a week at a time. So anyway, I have gone through. So this is, again, I think that there's a lot of good that comes out of this. I think there's a lot of red flags. This particular deal is not for me, but I'm not interested in buying an RV park anyway. But I definitely saw it and thought, this would be a good case study. So I appreciate you guys coming, listening to me talk about this stuff. It'll be recorded so that people can look at it in the future, so that they can use some of these different tools I've talked about to evaluate, their particular parks. But I know that there are a couple people here, so I will go ahead and I will stop my share, I think. And we'll open it up if there are any questions. Go ahead.
Hey guy, this is Dave Metzger.
Hey Dave, how are you doing, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for putting this on here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I was actually reaching out and talking to the guy over the past couple of days here, and I have no experience in the RV space whatsoever, but I've seen that entry price, I've seen the total price. I'm like, wow, this is really cheap. So all the red flags that you pointed out are actually great red flags that I've just overlooked and never looked at.
Yeah.
And looking at the population and the Walmarts around, and basically that it's in the middle of nowhere. Great points.
Yeah.
I did ask him about the pipeline project and if he has any literature on that or not. Sorry, I think my music is going pretty loud back there.
Oh, you're okay.
Um, and he said that the owner found out of it word of mouth from one of the construction workers. So
Yep.
I don't know if you were able to find any literature on that actual project or anything, but I couldn't. And
I didn't. I didn't look. To be frank, I just did this. A very very quick analysis of this,
Mhm.
and so that was my. So this was my just overview. Because again, I'm not an RV park buyer. I like mobile home parks. That's where I like it. But, and I have RV sites in my mobile home park, but I'm only going to keep those RV sites there until I fill up the rest of my park, and then I'm going to convert them to mobile home sites, just because that's my particular strategy. So again, not to poo-poo it, because I just haven't invested in it, but I prefer the lower maintenance of mobile home parks in that case. So I didn't look at it deeply, but I did think it was a good chance to show off just very basic strategies. Again, the bestplaces.net is fantastic. Like, I can't think of a better resource when you're trying to look for stuff like this, is to figure out kind of how things to help out for like rentals and population density and stuff like that. And of course the Walmart test is also a very big one. So
Perfect. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Ryan, I saw you joined. Did you have any questions there? Let's say I'll ask to unmute just in case you had any. You don't have to, but no big deal if that's the case. But sounds good. Okay, well, one of the things you can see kind of, that's up here on my stuff is that, I love networking. I love talking about mobile home parks. I'll talk about RV parks. They're a little different asset class, but they're very similar. So I love talking about it. So if you guys come across any and you just want to chat about it, send them my way. I don't need to JV on anything, just to take a look and be like, hey, let's go over the pros and the cons, right? So I always want to talk about real estate, and I love talking about mobile home parks. So I'm excited to do this. This is kind of my first like actual webinar thing. And again, I appreciate you guys showing up. I was expecting there to be no one here, and it was just going to go kind of into the vault. But I'm hoping to do some of these as I go through more and more, and I get more and more into sub 2. I'm hoping to do more mobile home park evaluations and get a bigger group together for stuff like that and kind of talk about it. So that's one of the goals of mine. So I appreciate you guys both very much for showing up, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend and a good week ahead. Take it easy. See ya.